All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the regional abatement check-in call. We had some conversations earlier on with regard to the regional abatement dollars, how we were making them available. Wanted to make ourselves available to you throughout that process to answer questions and make sure that we were moving things along. So I don't know, when did we make those dollars available? How long has it been? Has it been a month, 2 months?
I think we spoke just before the plans were due, and a very large percentage of you have submitted plans, and then probably a reasonably large subset of those folks have received money. We're waiting on just a handful of folks who have not submitted yet. As I spoke to some of you, the deadline was a deadline we set to try to get you your money as fast as possible. There's no punishment for not having submitted it yet. You just don't have your money. So please reach out to me or Kristen, that OSF Project Management mailbox, if you are at an impasse in terms of submitting that plan. We really would like to get you your dollars. I see Debbie's on and her camera is on, because round 2 is not that far away. And we chose this date for the meeting because we were hopeful that there might be some kind of budget information by today, but that is not true. But that was why we picked today. So yeah, I would say you have, if you have not submitted your plan yet, you've received a couple of emails from us. So reach back and let us know what your concern is so that we can get you that money. Remember, you can hold the money and continue to make decisions. So getting the plan to us does not mean that you will have to spend it as soon as it hits your account. So please let us know the holdup in your plan submission.
So my question was, when did we last meet and how long has it been? And you got a whole bunch of additional commentary there from Lucia with regard to kind of what's needed and where we're at. So that's great. I think, though, in a relatively short period of time, I think it's been, like 6 or 8 weeks, I think, since this process started. In a relatively short period of time, we've gotten a lot done. So most of you were able to submit the plans, giving us a prospective in terms of how you may use the money based on those 10 buckets. And we are getting dollars out to you if we haven't already gotten them to you. There are some outstanding. Some folks we haven't received plans from as of yet, and of course, as Lucia said, we're eagerly awaiting those plans from you because we want to get the dollars to you. And another good point is that this is the first of another 16 rounds, or we got 15 rounds of dollars that you are going to be receiving on an annual basis. So we started our process. I still think over the next few months, we may be smoothing out the process, in particular around reporting, but it's great how much we've been able to get done so far. So thanks everybody for that, for the work that you've done to make that happen. I also wanted to comment on the level of coordination that's happening, at the county level in terms of your thoughtfulness around how to use these dollars, how to coordinate with your colleagues and your system to really identify those outstanding needs. And to that end, one of the things that I wanted to talk with folks about is kind of, our ability to in reporting and talking about how these dollars are being used, to really be able to show comprehensively across the state, how we at the state level, as well as in our use of dollars, as well as with the counties, we're really covering the outstanding needs. We are really working to make sure that we're providing services and reaching folks who need the support and the service. So part of the reason that this is in my mind today is because we do have a requirement, stay with me, through the state opioid response, we have a requirement to submit a naloxone saturation plan. And we did meet this week with SAMHSA to talk about that plan, and it was amazing to me once Mary Brewster and I started talking. It's amazing to me how much work is going on in order to make naloxone available, and it isn't, it isn't only within the confines of the state opioid response grant. So in addition to what we're doing at the state level and the initiatives we've rolled out, the dollars we've made available through a few different funding streams, it does beg the question, what about at the county level? What at the county level may be happening in terms of trying to make naloxone available, assess the need for naloxone, even within certain communities, maybe within your county. So I think that our being able to work together to combine all of that information and to really, demonstrate how much we are doing at the state and county level to ensure that people have access to naloxone is a really big, important story that, we want to tell. So it does get into this notion of reporting and collecting information from you with regard to these use of funds. And at OASAS, we've started conversations in terms of how do we evaluate the use of the opioid settlement funds, and also how do we report on the use of funds that are passed through the regional abatement. So we are working, to develop what that reporting will look like. I'm absolutely interested in hearing from all of you with regard to, what you think is important to report out on, how you are evaluating and assessing your use of the funds at the local level. And two, keeping in mind, we're going to be doing this for the next 16 years, right? So anything that we build now, hopefully will build well, and it'll be in place for us to continue collecting information and evaluating the use of these funds for a number of years to come. So I'd be interested in hearing from folks. If folks want to raise their hand, or we can certainly unmute those who want to, join the discussion and talk a little bit about how you're looking at evaluating the use of funds and reporting, and if you'd like to share suggestions or thoughts with us. Or you haven't had time to even think about it yet, right? Right? You guys have had this onrush of like, you got money, you need to tell us how you figure out how you're going to use it, you got to report back to us. So maybe that hasn't even come into your thinking at this point in your planning yet. I see a hand up, Marissa.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thanks for hosting this. I'm Marisa Franchini from the city of Albany, and we did submit our plan. It has been a whirlwind for sure, so we haven't, I think, dedicated enough time to it. But what are the next steps from your end? Are we going to hear our plan be approved, or what's next?
So once your plan's submitted and we review it, it's quote unquote approved. And then we move towards processing the actual payment. And in terms of, and I'm not sure if, I know Debbie's on, you might be able to respond to the time frame for actually receiving payment.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm a little, I believe, aren't we sending a communication, Lucia? Isn't it like once you receive the plan, are you sending a communication to say you've received the plan and that it's moving to payments?
Kristen, did you want to talk about the various emails that go out? In terms of a general timeline from the time your plan's received and approved, if for some reason it were not approved, you would hear from us pretty quickly so that we could get what we needed to put you through the approval process. But in general, it's 4 to 6 weeks. But for anybody who has an amount that goes over $1 million, you should expect that it's closer to the 6-week mark than the 4-week mark. But Kristen, did you want to speak to the emails?
Yeah, I usually send an email when I hear back that your plan is approved and it's been through budget the first time, so everything's going well. So at that point in time, I'm able to send out to let you know that it'll be estimated about 4 to 6 weeks from that date. So we try to give you that timeline.
And Karin, I know that you're on, and I was just wondering, can you remind us how many of the LGU's payments have gone out?
How many? Let me.
Yeah, that we've put forward for payment. I think it was like, I don't know why I'm saying 55 of the LGUs.
I'm seeing. All right, I just faster.
So maybe while you look for that information, so Marissa, hopefully you've received an acknowledgement of receipt of your plan. So you should get an email to acknowledge that we received your plan and that we're moving on to processing the payment. And you know, based on what Lucia said, depending on the amount, it could be between 4 and 6 weeks to receipt of that payment. In terms of what happens thereafter, really, you know, these meetings are, you know, part of our effort in communicating with all of you and having a conversation about the reporting, because we do need to collect reporting from all receiving entities by August 1st in terms of your use of the dollars, because we then, OASAS, is responsible for reporting out by November 1st. On use of funds, and that includes dollars that have come directly to OASAS for us to use to support a number of different initiatives, as well as dollars that have passed through the regional abatement. I know that I have had conversations with some folks, and I don't know if Jason's on or not, but some folks were also asking, do you all need to report to us with regard to other dollars that you've received? So in terms of the funding that was sent directly to counties by the Attorney General's office, we are trying to get clarification on whether it is our responsibility to collect information from you on the use of those dollars, or if the Attorney General's office will be in touch with you to get that information. So either way, you know, we're looking to establish a process and a system for collecting information, and realizing too, in this first year, you know, the information you're able to provide is going to be limited, right? You haven't had the dollars for very long. If you're issuing RFAs or, you know, whatever your procurement process may be, it's unlikely that you'll have an opportunity to really spend much of the money by August 1st. And so it's likely in this first round, you know, we will be asking you for information in terms of what is the status of your process. And if you have spent money, of course, you know, great if you can report that out. So I'll refer to this year's reporting as a little bit light because you guys, again, are just getting started, and expect that we will have some more robust reporting in place by this time next year. So to that end too, I have to say again, you know, thank you to Lucia for always encouraging us to be efficient and to do things, you know, as well as possible, because one of the things that we need to discuss is also our mechanism for collecting this information from you. Obviously wanting to make something that's, you know, easy to use, user-friendly, electronic, and a way for us to compile information relatively quickly. I'm sure you all are thinking about, you know, the same thing we are, and that is, you know, you've received dollars, and shortly you will, you know, the next year you're going to receive additional funding, and of course you may not have spent everything received from year to year. And so it is a little bit of a challenge to try to, you know, track the spending and how much money has actually been used versus, you know, what's available. So again, interested in hearing from folks if you have suggestions or thoughts on that. And of course, you know, we do want to know about the services that you're providing, that these dollars are paying for. And I think, again, it's a matter of developing a reporting mechanism that's not taxing, while still getting, you know, as much rich information from you as we can, so that we can in turn report it out to others, like the legislature, you know, the state at large, the governor's office, and of course the advisory board. So do folks feel a conversation about reporting this time around is too soon?
So hi, this is Geraldine Ford from the city of Buffalo.
Oh, hi there.
Hi. So I guess my question would be, if we do not have a reporting protocol in place, how do we know what we should be collecting? Or there's a new program that we're implementing, you know, with the police department, brand spanking new that we're, you know, and using some things from the fire department and our citizen services department. And, you know, they have a lot of questions. So I'm not really sure, you know, if we don't have this process in place, do you have at least, you know, some best practices of documents that we should be collecting, you know, once we do get that system?
So once you have your service delivery in place and you're ready to go, what information do we need to collect from you, or that you need to provide to us to help us understand the use of funds? In all honesty, we're figuring that out, right? So we're all caught in the same whirlwind and trying to determine that. I would encourage everyone in terms of how you're using the dollars in your implementation that you are tracking, or you're assessing the use of dollars and the impact. And even if you're considering some process measures in terms of how many services were delivered, or how many providers received funding, how many services were delivered, how many people received services as a result of these dollars. I think some basic counts like that, I think, are a good place to start. The challenge too is that, we don't know how you all are using the dollars. So it's difficult to say, this is the information you should report to us, when there's a wide range of how folks are using the dollars, and it's not as though we can identify a standard measure across the entire state for all, entities that have this funding to report back to us. Certainly, there will be opportunity to provide us with some type of narrative at some point to describe how you decided to use the dollars. The 10 priority areas that you reported out on that were included for this first report in order to trigger the payment is what we will use, especially, particularly for this first year. We will ask you, based on what you reported to us, how are you ultimately using the money, and if you've been able to spend down any of that money. So that's like the really, again, light version of the reporting that we'll be using for this first iteration. So we will put that together and have that to you so you can report to us by August 1st. But I think that's at a minimum, right? I think that it doesn't necessarily, give us a lot of information about what you may be doing. And that's why I think, important to hear from you in terms of how you're using the dollars. And, I had mentioned the naloxone saturation plan earlier. If we saw that a number of counties were going to do something around naloxone distribution, that might be something that we would want, to then collect all counties, so we could, it's an effort that's common across all the counties, and then we could collect information on that and be able to speak to that. So to the extent that we can see commonalities in terms of how you're using the money, that may be able to inform what kind of measures or what data we would be asking for. I think that we're still a little early in this process to be able to figure this out. Of course, they say you should always know your question before you get your initiatives underway, but there's so many initiatives, we need to understand what they all are first. Let's see here. Okay.
So Connie, would you say it's fair to say that how we asked you for your breakdown in the plan is another way that we will then ask you, you know, in terms of what you had planned, those 10 areas of focus, where have you allocated your dollar?
Yep,
Is that,
definitely. Yep, so
Yeah.
that'll be at minimum what, you know, we would ask for, especially this year, right, as people are just getting started. I see that David has his hand up. David, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, I'm from Erie County, by the way, the Department of Mental Health. So a lot of these funds, and we've already received some money, by the way. So thanks very much. I thought Geraldine's point was a great one. So it's sort of related to that, but I have a two-part question. Is that okay? Is there a maximum amount of questions I can ask, or?
There is, and it's a half a question actually, so.
Okay, well then I'll try to cut it in half. Again, we did receive some money already, and we are you know, very appreciative. That's all great. But as everyone knows on this call, in order to deliver this money out to, you know, to the providers, we're in the process now of trying to amend our contracts. And so obviously not having all this information up front, you know, and I listened to everything that you said and it makes sense, but it's a little bit difficult to amending the contracts and telling them how to spend it. And I know about the, you know, the bullet points. I think there's 10 areas that they could use and that kind of thing, but it's still a little bit difficult to really, because the providers have a lot of questions in turn. And so it's just hard to pinpoint without knowing how we have to report on this. I think it's just, and I'm assuming that other LGUs are feeling the same thing, but it's just, so this is maybe more of a comment, but it's just going to be, I think, difficult to try to track all of this, or to know how we're supposed to be doing this before we really know how we're going to be held to account as far as all the reporting goes or whatever. So, but I did listen to what you said, Connie, and so I know we just have to try to be patient as far as that goes. But I guess I just wanted to throw that out there, where we're going to try to do it the best we can, but it's difficult to sort of, we have the money, we're going to try to get the money out to providers, but it's hard to kind of tell them exactly how to use the money when we don't really know, and how that they're going to have to report it back to us before we have a visual to any of this reporting.
Mm-hmm. So, David, given the work that you would engage in with the providers, you know, on a regular basis, you know, I guess I would say, how do you usually get information from your providers? How do you usually assess the use of dollars? What type of reporting would providers normally give you, you know, in other circumstances?
Right.
So I would use that same thinking to guide what you might ask them for this time around. And two, I think, you know, as Lucia was saying, you know, we are going to be asking, based on those 10 areas, how much did you spend of the allocated amounts, you know, in each of those 10 areas, those 10 priority areas. So would that be something that you would be able to track, David, or are you saying that once dispersed, it would be difficult to track the use based on those 10 priority areas?
No, I mean, that's what we're certainly gonna do. So I'm glad you said that, because that's kind of what we're thinking. That's really all we have to go on so far. So that's what it's kind of what we have been talking about and how we're doing. And I understand it's a very fluid situation for everybody. That's why we have dozens and dozens of people on this call, and everyone's kind of really looking very inquisitively and hanging on the edge of their seats and all of that. So to that point specifically, or I guess more directly, do we assume that these dollars can only be used in OASAS programs? Because I've also seen some things come out from OMH, and then I see Lucia shaking her head. So I sort of agree. So I did hear that. So that would mean it's not just limited to OAS programs, correct?
No, right. Correct. It's not. And in terms of the allowable uses, we do have information posted on the regional abatement section of the OSF initiative page to speak to that.
Okay, so Erie County, as I said, this was multi-pronged here. So Erie County, you know, we're a larger county, and I realize we're more complex than a lot of the other ones. But so following along that point, if these provide, because we're passing the money at least initially along to our 12 or 15 of these providers that we already have, you know, through our state aid letter that we receive money. Some of those may or may not have OMH programs also, but I guess what I'm trying to articulate here is, you know, so how is this going to be when we're thinking of the CFR? So now if this money is, because I've also heard that this money might be coming through the state aid letter, and then I really don't see how it could, but if it, do we have an answer on that? Will it be in the SAFA? Do we know?
So I'll just answer that. I believe it's been answered. I thought, Lucia, you had a fact sheet or there was a Q&A, but the money is being sent to you from you filling out the plan of use forms, right? And it's not, you know, it's not going into the CFR. If you award it, if you as the LGU make a determination that you're going to go into contract with a provider, the provider will have to report into the CFR.
Right. So you're saying it doesn't have to go on Erie County's CFR because we're passing the funds through to the provider, which makes sense, I guess.
Yep.
So that's why it's not, so it's, I'm sorry, and maybe I missed it because Mark O'Brien, our commissioner, he kind of asked me to sit in on the call today because he's out of town. And if it was answered or asked previously, I apologize. So it's, so you said it's not coming through the state aid letter.
Right. The webpage that Debbie just referred to, I put in the chat window. So if you see that little dot to open your chat window, that webpage is going to take you into the information for this particular money that we're talking about. So this call, we're talking about regional abatement funding, which is that county, city, town money. And the FAQ there, and the FAQ is how we're going to do this group of folks. So we're having these meetings, they're recorded, they'll be posted there. The FAQ is going to get updated. It has been updated from the last time that we had a meeting. So, and it was updated mostly with a financial question. So Dave, it's possible that the answer in writing on the FAQ is for you to refer back to and
Okay.
be able to answer that question. But also, while we're talking about that, some of you all are talking about dealing directly with your providers, OASAS providers, and your OMH providers. I just want to put out there that as we are continuing to make progress on our competitive RFAs, that some of these providers are being awarded money from the opioid settlement fund directly from us through a competitive RFA. So you also want to be aware of those projects that are happening in your localities so that you can make sure that any money that you give them is not supplanted by any of the RFA money that they might be receiving from us.
Hi, this is Geraldine again. So I just want to clarify. So we're talking RFAs, but what we did was again for our police behavioral health and Narcan program, wanted to use some of the funds to expand upon that. Our fire program, I don't have it in front of me to name which program we're referring to in fire. Citizen services with awareness, and I think that they're working with a local group. And so we didn't use an RFA process, and I just want to make sure that that is okay.
Yes, that's absolutely okay.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. So, and we did invite, I know that there has been like a little bit of confusion. Some of our regional office folks, staff have joined us today because we're really trying to close the loop on communication and what gets said. So these dollars as they go from us to you are yours to plan. I think we answered several times like this idea of, can you RFA? You certainly can RFA or RFP the money. And then I think what we were trying to communicate was then it goes by your RFA rules. It goes by your RFP rules at your level of government.
Right, it's your procurement rules, right? So the only real restriction that the state is placing on you is in what is in statute for the use of the funds. And that has to be taken very seriously, along with the fact that you cannot supplant. So these funds are not meant to say that you've been spending money on, you know, some sort of opioid substance use disorder service, and now you have this influx of money, and you're going to say, oh, I'm going to replace what I was covering already out of my budget and use this opioid settlement budget so that I can use my other dollars for something else. That you cannot do.
Okay,
You
great.
have to use these dollars to pay for something that you weren't paying for before. That's a real restriction. And then the other restriction is you have to use it according to the settlement agreements and or per the categories by the opioid settlement advisory board. But other than that, you get to procure how you spend it according to your own local community county rules.
So for example, to piggyback off of that, my name's Emma Hoppers, I work for Jerry. We could use, so if we have a budget for the Narcan program and the behavioral health, if we have a budget of say 500,000, for example, and we want to use like OSF funds for 250,000 of that to reach the, so that we are able to pay for the program, is that kind of what you're implying? Like, you know, we can't just use, like if we wanted to use a program that was 500,000, we could use part of the funds for that. We just can't, you know, make it pay for everything type of thing.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is in last year, your last completed spending year, if you spent $500,000 on Narcan, and then you went and budgeted 500,000 because you're saying to yourself, I plan to spend the same amount because I didn't get a budget cut, you've got no way of using OSF for any of that 500,000. What you could do is say, I'm spending 500,000 of my county funds, and now I have this influx of opioid settlement funds, and now I'm going to add 200,000 more. So I'm going to spend 700,000 on Narcan.
Right.
That you can do.
Yes, I think that's what I was trying to get across. Yeah, like we could use it
Okay.
to increase the program. Yeah, sorry, I missed.
Yes. No. Then you're right on spot, Emma. Thank you.
has to
And
be.
thank you for raising that question because it's a good question.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
I know that Sharon has her hand up. Sharon McDougall, you have a question?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just following up. Thank you so much for the RFA, RFP clarification at the local level. I know that OASAS field office folks are looking for that for some things, and we just want to be consistent. I want to circle back though for a moment. The CFR reporting. So I understand it doesn't come down to the counties through our CFR. However, you're saying that the providers getting the award will have to report it out in their CFR. So will that, can you give some clarity to that as far as I'm clearly going to be putting it in a contract, and I want to make sure the contract language is very specific to what they're reporting, who they're reporting to, and how they're required to report the expenditure of this funding. Clearly, I'm going to want those reports, but how are they reporting it out in the CFR next year, right? Because they're going to be needing to do that by first quarter of next year, and we're going to want to make sure that they have the guidance. Any thoughts? What codes are they using? Are they using their current CFR codes, and we're just kind of match up the awards to those without it supplanting money? Just kind of trying to figure out how we're going to do that operationally, fiscally.
Yeah, thank you for raising that question. I won't be able to tell you the exact things because I don't have that expertise at my fingertips. I have staff that have that expertise, but I don't know. I tapped out my ability to be really specific for you when I said you won't have to do it. But I believe we typed it out in an answer to a question that probably is going to be posted for you somewhere. So that will be able to get you, and we'll make it very specific. And Karin, I don't know, is there any other?
The basic guidance is if you give the funds to the provider and they use them in their outpatient clinic, they should be, those expenses should be reported in their outpatient clinic as well as the offsetting revenue as the grant. So it should be a one-to-one, but we will see the entire, you're reporting your entire clinic's expenses on the CFR, and those expenses may include activities you did with the OSF funds or the provider did. Does that make sense?
It does, but I mean, if you look at the AG's approved use for some of the funds, some of those don't exactly align with CFR reporting. So if like we're really getting creative and another county's detox crisis stabilization is using it for peer and open access program support, which, to make sure it's not supplanting other funding streams and all of that, but they've never done a CFR for our county, like it's going to get a little complicated.
Well, they have to file a CFR if there was, they meet the requirements of receiving a CFR. I don't know that a program that is getting money from the OSF for a non-certified, non-funded, non-Medicaid eligible service is necessarily required.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the OASAS CFR reporting that providers have to do every year will match up completely with the Attorney General's approved use of opioid settlement funds. So if I'm getting creative and I've already got the funds, it's in an account, and I'm getting creative with a provider to utilize that fund, and they're expending it and utilizing that fund on something that is in no way, shape, or form an OASAS CFR reporting thing, but you're telling me they have to report next year.
I'm telling you that they have to report the expenses that occur in our programs. So
if they're not an OASAS certified or funded program, right, they wouldn't meet the definition to report in a CFR in the first instance. And if that's the case, then they wouldn't report in a CFR in this instance either. It's only, yeah.
So if it's not a OASAS CFR manual reporting code already, it would not be reported by them in next year's CFR for OASAS. But I'm suspecting you guys are going to want some data and fiscal reporting. So is there another mechanism we should be tracking and putting in our contracts?
Right. So I'm going to restate that just to make sure we're both on the same page. What I'm saying is if they don't meet the requirement as a provider to report in CFR, then they won't have to report in CFR. If they meet the requirement to report in a CFR, then they have to. And if they don't know how to do that, then we will answer those questions on a one-to-one basis. But right now, for those providers that meet the requirement to report in a CFR, right now our general guidance is the program that they're using those funds for, they should report those expenses and that revenue in there. There may be questions, and totally hear you, that we haven't thought of everything. So we'll definitely make ourselves open and available to answer those. But there will be some providers that won't, by our definition, won't have to report in the CFR. And so I think you're asking a question now about that group, right? And I think this goes to, in general, back to like Lucia and Connie, we're talking about how, reporting is going to happen. Yeah, no, they're all really great questions. So thank you for all this thinking.
And we like to kind of put a lot of that stuff into contracts with providers ahead of time so they know their expectations and what they're responsible for, not just for us, but with you guys. And you have that huge, OASAS reporting thing that we always put into our contracts. So, I just want to be as clear right up front. Thank you. Okay, we'll wait and then I'll do case by case.
So I put into the chat window as well, the OSF project management email. You are always welcome. If you're waiting on something or you're not sure, please send an email there. If it's something that we can answer via email that we feel would be a clear response via email, we will email you right back. Oftentimes you are asking me very complex and complicated questions, in which turn I pick up the phone because I usually want to really try to understand what it is that you're getting at, that I don't provide you any misinformation. But just to sort of go along this same thread that we're on in terms of what happens if you give the money to someone who is not an OASAS provider or not an OMH provider, we are in fact, the advisory board and in their meetings and has lots of community folks show up and say, hey, we're a 501(c)(3), we're in XYZ county. We do this great work around opioids. When will we be receiving $1? And so we're also letting them know your county has money. You want to talk to those folks at your county level and work on that local level, because in the event that we are working very hard to understand how could we deliver money directly to a 501(c) that is not our provider, but we don't have a current RFA for that. So we're sort of looking to you to kind of really think about these things at the local level. And that sort of brings up Sharon's point, is that you might end up sending dollars to folks who are not our providers. And we are, as Debbie said, still continuing to think on how do we best ask you to let us know how those dollars were spent. TBD.
I'm sorry, I had one other question. Don't hate me. The 15% administrative oversight, we have a CCSI is our fiscal who helps us with the CFR. Any issue in us, forwarding that clearly as an extra support for like a fiscal oversight for that 15%, or data oversight, how do you guys want us to report that administrative oversight? Because
I'm just going to jump in just to say I'm not sure if you're asking a fiscal question or a reporting question. So I'm going to just ask you if you wouldn't mind kind of repeat, unless Lucia and Connie understood it completely. I was going to ask you, because at first I thought you were asking a fiscal question, but then I was like, at the end, I thought it was a reporting question. So I just wasn't quite sure.
We're kind of summarizing it as both. Included in the award is up to 15% can be used for administrative oversight, which I'm categorizing as our fiscal reporting and possible data reporting that might be necessary for OASAS with this funding stream. How do you want us to report that 15%?
So I believe, and actually I'll have to rely on Lucia, and I don't know if Andrew's on. In terms of the report form, so we do have the 10 categories, and knowing that you do have the 15% allowable for admin, we will have a space to acknowledge that on the reporting form. So if you are using funding for admin, you can indicate that along with the spending in the other 10 categories. So Sharon, I don't know if that was a high five and a thumbs up, or if you had your hand up for a question.
Yeah, let's call it both. I like that. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay. And just a reminder to folks as well that as we're having these meetings, we're taking in these questions, now, as well as, questions that come in through the mailbox. We are compiling those. We do have our frequently asked questions document that's posted on the Opioid Settlement Fund Regional Abatement page. So I really, encourage you to make use of that document. There is a lot of good information in there, and not to say, that folks don't keep coming up with new questions because you do, but know that, there are some questions that, all of you want, have asked, or all you all want answers to. So there may be information of use to you in that FAQ, and I really encourage you to keep an eye on that and know that we are continuing to update it. So in fact, it has been updated since the last time that we talked based on questions that have come in and questions that were asked in our last meeting. We will do the same after this meeting as well. A question just came in terms of a reporting portal. Is there a reporting portal that you should get set up in? No, there's nothing that you need to do at this time in order to report. In our first iteration of collecting information from you, we did utilize something called FormStack so that you received a URL, a link you could just click on, and it would take you into a form and be able to complete the fields with the information we were requesting of you. We likely will do the same thing for the reporting for this summer. So expect that you would get an email with a link, and we'd ask you to click on the link and complete the form. I would love to think that we will be more sophisticated in the future in terms of collecting information from you, but I don't want to overpromise. So I'll just say as of this summer, for now, we'll use FormStack. You'll receive that link. Other questions? I'm just skimming the chat and also looking for hands. Oh. Jay, you have a question?
Yeah, back to the administrative cost up to 15%. Was that specifically for like the LGU for, creating the contracts and processing, pass-through monies, and then once we give an allotted amount for a particular service or program, did they get a piece of that? Up to 15%, or can they charge an additional admin oversight for whatever program they are executing or creating? Not sure. That would seem to be duplicative.
So we provided a 15% admin to the LGUs for your administrative function in managing these funds. If your procurement rules normally provide some kind of percentage of admin in your contracts, then I would say again, we're not prescribing how you procure. We're allowing you to follow all the things that you feel that you need to follow to put these funds out there and run successful programs and services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I do appreciate the fact that we're all in a very challenging position, that, we've been given this opportunity of these funds. It's not unusual that, we receive legislation and just given the verbiage that's used, that it's not necessarily, very clear exactly how we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so there's a lot that we need to figure out. And, coming from my perspective, I'd like to collect all the information and know everything you're doing and get lots and lots of data from you. So, we can truly understand like how these dollars are being used across the state, and wouldn't that be great? But we need to be realistic and again, not wanting to make this overly taxing for anyone. But I do realize that we're operating with, not a lot of information necessarily to inform just how we should be doing things. So we kind of have to figure that out. Know that, we're going to identify at a minimum what we need to do. And, too, again, this is a long-term endeavor. So things may change slightly over time. We'll learn as we go and likely make some modifications as we go. So again, know that if you're feeling a little bit uncertain and feeling like this is all very ambiguous, I'm with you. I understand completely. We are all in that situation together. If that provides any consolation, I'm not sure.
Jay, did you have a follow-up question, or is that just your hand from before?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Get a
I'm
chance
good.
to answer your question. So any other questions that folks have? I have only a few people on camera, so I'm not, I can't get a sense of if people are feeling like frustrated or if people are feeling like, oh, this really wasn't very helpful, in which case I want to know that so we can make, this time helpful to folks. And certainly if you have any comments or feedback after today to send something along to the Opioid Settlement Fund. project management inbox. Comments or questions? Lucia, anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think we've basically covered it. We're all in flux, getting comfortable with change. We've heard this week that additional settlements have been reached. So just keep your bank account open and keep coming up with great ideas. And I think it's really awesome, actually, like can't say that it was done perfectly by design, but this no supplantation rule has really gotten a lot of folks into, the same room and talking and planning, and everybody right now is really focused on maximizing the spending to the best result. So I think that's awesome, and we should enjoy that while it's here, and then they're going to really start asking us, okay, what have you done? Tell us how awesome it is now. So, but we still have a little more time on that. Dave?
Really fast, I promise this time. And you may not even know the answer to this yet, but as far as if the dollars aren't used, I know they can be carried forward. Can they be carried forward indefinitely? Or, I mean, will there ever come a point in time where they have to be given back to the state, do you know? Or do they, because the providers I know are already asking. And not that people aren't planning on spending obviously as much as possible within the lines, but just, I think, wondering if that would ever have to be returned.
It's an excellent question, and we ask ourselves that same question. No, I will tell you the answer that we've come up with. These are legal settlement agreements where named entities are to be provided money. So once, and obviously we have a formula that is determining that the LGUs receive, the apportionment of the regional share. That funding is not returnable unless for some scary reason there was some fraudulent activity, right? And that would be upon audit. So no, we're not expecting that money would come back now, but I'm going to answer sort of a second part that I heard you say the providers are asking. So that, to me, that's a different question. The providers are not guaranteed this money, right? So this is the same contractual agreement that you will have with them, whatever agreement you have with them, is that they're supposed to do something and then you pay them to do that. So if there's a failure there, I don't think there's a guarantee of that money. I'm just putting that out there because I am a fiscal agent and I have to be saying those boring, lovely things. But, I just wanted to say that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does. I probably have to process it a little bit, but and to your point about the providers. So just to be clear, to their defense, I think it's just, there's a lot of stuff being thrown at the wall right now. So I don't think they necessarily plan either way, but I think it's probably under the category of maybe paranoia or whatever, and they're wondering what if we don't, because we don't want to use it in the wrong way. And let's say we don't use it, you know what I mean? So I think that's where some of that's coming from. So I don't really even have an opinion on whether I think that's going to be a problem or not. But I just wanted to ask it. Thanks and thanks everyone for this. Has been very, very helpful.
Okay, so folks, again, opioid settlement fund project management. Oh, Jeanette.
I see Janet has a question.
Sorry.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. As David was talking, I was thinking, state aid, you normally forward the money, right? You give it before they've really actually done the service. And just wanted to clarify on that, because I'm seeing this as different, at least for our county, that we're more doing a reimbursement of what they've actually spent rather than like fronting the money. And I just wanted to get clarification. Is there guidance on that?
The only guidance that we have, and I know I kind of say the same thing, is it's the money has gone to the localities to determine its best use. And I know that that's hugely challenging, right? Because you have an influx of money and it's across numerous years, and it's at different amounts, and we won't even know all the amounts, right? This is like a huge, challenging puzzle. I don't know if you guys are puzzlers, but think about, you get a 3,000 piece puzzle and you dump it out, and you're like, good Lord, where do I even start, right? It feels a little bit like that. So, the idea is, I know you're working with the providers and you're coming up with ideas and you're going to give them contracts. And I think you will know best, right? Because you boots on the ground, you're working with them. You'll know best if you need to extend the budget to continue. The money's in your bank account, right? So it's really in your hands to say, I'm working with a provider. We went into contract to do this. They had delays. Yes, I'm going to continue this contract and continue the funding. Or do you say, look, I have these monies and I have this other program that we started funding, we're getting some data and that's fabulous. And my commissioner really loves it. And maybe I need to pull the plug on something and go fund some. These are the decisions as fiscal agents of our monies we make all the time. You'll be able to make those same decisions with this money, so, but yes, we're just all coming out of COVID. So we're still all reeling from the fact that we can't find workforce, right? And we can't, so there's a lot of struggles ahead. Getting money is fantastic, but not ready for it is challenging. So, the only guidance we have to give you is to use your same procurement rules and your same cycle of audit and things of that, and your same, outcomes that you want to get, and make your decisions from there. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think I was looking more for like the timing of giving the payments out, right? State aid, you give it at the beginning of the quarter before the services are provided. That, I think that's more of what I was looking for. If we're getting into a contract with them for like a year, I'm not sure that our county wouldn't do that for like any other grant or anything, to put the money up front and then, figure it out on the back end. So I think that's where I was going.
Right. So we're not prescribing to you.
Okay.
But the answer, bottom line, is we're not prescribing. We're giving you the money.
Okay.
And you should follow your same procurement requirements of how and payment schedules.
Got it. That's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have a really good question, and I'm glad this came up in the chat, about how is this different than the webinar that's scheduled next Wednesday? So you all get your own webinar specific to regional abatement. The other monthly community meeting, we're calling it, is about all of the opioid dollars. And we will do our best to not really talk as much about the regional abatement on that call, because you guys get your own call. But we may be referring to you. So referring the folks on that call who it goes out to a wider group, all providers, OMH providers, anyone really who looks at our website, say, can I go to this community meeting? Sure you can. So those 5013C folks. So they're going to be asking us questions about the RFAs that are coming out. And so we may mention you, like we may say your county just received some money, or your city, or your, not that we don't like provide them with a list, but we just say there's local monies in addition to the monies and the opportunities that we're telling you about. So that is how the 426 call is different.
Thank you.
That was a really good question. Because actually I saw that in the chat and I'm like, 426, what are we doing on 426? Wait a minute. All right. So we've actually gone a little bit over, but these have been really, really good questions. Hopefully it has been helpful to folks, and I do expect that we'll continue to do this on a monthly basis as we go through the summer, so we can get through that first reporting cycle. And then also, we'll be be the second year of dollars that we will need to issue. So we'll need to get through that process as well. So I'd rather have this opportunity and make sure that we're maintaining communication and that we're sharing information, however limited the information may be, but that we're sharing information and we have this time together. So I hope that you have a chance to enjoy this beautiful Friday. I heard it's beautiful out in Buffalo, just like it is down in New York City and here in Albany. So I hope that that's the case as well in the North Country and the Finger Lakes and so on. So I hope everybody enjoys the day, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.